Welcome to Shift Happens podcast. I'm Camila Damati, CEO of Tona Business Consulting, and your host. I created this podcast after working closely with clients and noticing a common challenge. They all had questions about how to lead transformations effectively and successfully. Here in each episode, I sit down with senior leaders to explore their real life stories, lessons learned, and practical strategies for managing organizational change. This show is for you. So I would love to hear your questions, thoughts, and ideas on how we can make it better. Hello, welcome to the show. I'm very excited today to introduce you our guest, Bobby Smith, who has a huge experience in many different roles he played in his career. And we'll be thrilled to hear him to talk more about how he managed change during all his experiences, all his role in his career. Welcome, Bobby. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate being here and meeting your audience. So I'm excited. Yes, my background a little bit is medical education. So I was working with doctors and surgeons quite a bit. I then got started in the direct sales industry, and I built a rather big sales organization around the world. And then a good friend of mine unfortunately lost his daughter to cancer, and he asked me to start a national nonprofit cancer foundation, which I did for about 10 years. And then through a chance meeting, I was invited to and took the president position, now president at Powur, which has been the fastest growing solar company in the United States for the last 4 years.
That's amazing. Can you tell us a little bit more about what do you do today in this company?
My job really is to build the front end of the machine. So I'm always looking for talent, professional sales talent, team builders. And then I tend to try and look for complementary verticals, like things that would go along with whoever's industry they're watching or my industry, i.e. here, real estate, roofers, people who already have a client base that they could add something else to. So, and a lot of relationship building. If you run a business long enough, I've been doing this for about 9 years with Power. We'll talk about this, I'm sure. There's going to be ups and downs, and there's going to be change. And I think one of the greatest things that gets you through that change, which I know we'll talk about, is relationships, personal relationships, trust with the field.
I can tell you have a huge passion about leadership and connecting with people, and that's amazing because it's such an important element when you're dealing with change, right? So, with that said, can you share with us one of the most impactful experiences that you had, that you experienced, or that you led teams through change?
Yeah, well, I think we changed an industry, so that was a pretty big change. We've changed the model of our company or innovated it. We're about to release the next model in the coming weeks, so I'm about to go through change, significant change again. So change never ends. If you're building a business, you have to embrace it. That's the first thing. You can't fear it. You can't worry about it. You're almost looking for it. Like, I hope for change, because if you're not changing, you're dying. Because the world's changing. So two changes. Our change was we took the traditional model of solar and took it to a platform economy, like Uber did, like EXP Real Estate did. And I believe today that if it applies to anyone listening today, that the future of almost every major industry has shifted to a platform economy because of the lifestyle and the world we live in, and COVID and changes in consumer habits. So we built the only, platform economy, if you will, for solar, and we could talk about that. And probably the other biggest change that I learned in my career, building different companies, was the opportunities on social media from a really high level business perspective. I don't think enough professionals understand the value of LinkedIn as one, and even Facebook today, which I thought was more social. It's become a lot more business, and that's a change. Understanding, I've placed about 700 salespeople in my company and multiple executives strictly from social media, from LinkedIn. Change. The world's changing.
Absolutely. How did you change the way to see the social media overall as you're talking about that? I mean, what were the biggest elements? When did you realize and how did you transform the way to see these platforms and use to your business?
Well, I think first time, like I think a lot of times by great inventions was by accident. I took a position for a company that was in sports, motivational marketing, kind of right up my alley. And I realized that all I was a soccer coach for my kids. So I didn't have a base to reach out to. So I had to create it. And LinkedIn was just born around that time. And
Mhm.
I got a couple books and started reading. And then I always tell people you just got to do it. Here's what I believe, and you would hear some of the leading business advocates in the world talk about. If you're in business today and you don't have a viable LinkedIn profile, you should find a new career. That's how significant it is. People won't take you seriously. The first thing they're going to do in today's world is they're going to look you up online and they're going to see who you are and what you stand for and how many connections you have and what kind of articles you're posting. And I don't think how many people realize that. Even one of the gentlemen from Shark Tank, multi-billionaire, was just quoted. If you don't have a robust LinkedIn profile, choose a new career.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I was listening a podcast this weekend and there was a comment talking about like, there's a lot of people as members in LinkedIn, and about 1% is using and posting on a consistent basis. So it's a huge opportunity to grow and use the platform.
Yeah.
You're
I,
benefiting.
I mean, it's a separate training, separate conversation. I've kind of become kind of a teacher of it. Most people just blatantly might post on LinkedIn, and that will normally not be met with great reception. It's more what I found very effective is connecting, as in anything else, and engaging and asking permission privately to send someone something. Oftentimes, if you post your company's objectives or your objectives or all those things in a group post on LinkedIn, it will be met with skepticism and old school thinking and all of that. But if you get them personally and you engage with them, and ask them permission to send them some information. I've had great success doing that. I've recruited, it's extraordinary talent.
Wow, that's nice. Um, Going back to change and the challenges, would
Yes.
you share, I mean, one of the biggest challenges that you went through during, for managing change, and what did you learn? What would you do different?
Well, I think you have to start with yourself. I think you have to embrace change. I think you have to look for it. And I think you have to really think it through. Whenever I do these things, I'll take a hike and I'll do whatever I do in nature or whatever, and I kind of
Mm.
open up to the universe and start thinking about, what this change could look like. The things that I fought through, or the things I know we'll talk about, are again a lot of times people's opinions. I'm not really necessarily interested in people's opinions. I respect them. But there's an old saying, if you buy someone's opinion, you buy their paycheck and you buy their lifestyle. So I've been told many times in my career, I made a little bit of money because I got in front of the cellular industry many years ago.
Hmm.
And people said no one's ever going to use that thing, cellular phones. I'm dating myself. When I got involved in this other little industry, people laughed at me because they said no one's ever going to use that thing. And it was the internet. Um, and then even when I bought my first home here, no one congratulated me because it was out in the country on an acre of property and all that. They all were hung up about where I was going to shop and what I was going to do in the winter and all those things. Nobody was looking at the beauty or the potential value as communities shifted out into the country and wanted to get away from that urban lifestyle. So I learned very early in my career never to buy into what people think. So the big stoppers are people's opinions. And I'm a Star Trek guy. I've been a Star Trek guy my whole life to go places where no one's ever been before. So if you're not prepared to do that in today's world, you really can't exist. You've got to be looking for change, embracing change, surrounding yourself with people who dig change and understand change and why it's meaningful. We have a change in culture post-COVID. We have a change in lifestyles with Gen X and Gen Z, and I'm a little older than that, so you have to appeal to the shifts in the world, and if you don't, you're gone. It's that simple.
Yes, absolutely. And as you mentioned about being surrounded by people that embrace change, how would you engage? How would you work and lead these people to be with you, to get the buy-in
Yeah.
to go in this change journey with you?
Well, again, I think it's part of it. Culture, I think, has never been more important today than it has ever been in the history of business and humanity. I think people want to be a part of something. They want to stand for something. Often they want deeper meaning and social responsibility, and they want to see, what your company gives back to. And, we started that culture right from the beginning of Power. We were always giving back, building solar homes for people that were sleeping on cardboard boxes and giving back to the rainforest. And, I live on the East Coast and I joined this Southern California company that was based on the beach in Southern California. When we started, we were in a little room above a clothing store on the beach. I think I was blessed with a CEO who he always spoke from the heart. He was never scared to drop F-bombs, kind of famous for it. Some people didn't dig that necessarily. But it was always sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly. It was complete transparency. If something was messed up in our systems, we wanted to own it. We wanted people to know about it. We wanted people to understand it. We're going through tremendous change right now, which we could talk about all the reasons, but I think you got to surround yourself with people who believe in a new world. Look, if you don't believe that this world is shifting and has to shift and has to continue to shift, then again, I don't know how anyone can exist today in business.
I agree. And I love that you mentioned the word transparency. Because if you think about all the steps as you're going to change, there's gotta be good communication with authenticity and transparency from the leadership, right?
Yeah, we've always had an open Facebook page with thousands of people on there that could share their thoughts or concerns and again, just culture. I think it's the biggest thing in business today, particularly if you're trying to attract a younger audience. They're not looking for that 9 to 5 punch in, fight traffic, listen to a boss, mentality. You got a lot of people today looking for side hustles and probably 40% of the workforce today is looking for side hustles.
Mhm.
50% of them are already making six figures. But with the cost of groceries and the cost of this and the cost of that, they need more. So you have to appeal to these audiences because that's where the world's heading.
Absolutely. And just curious, as in this wonderful journey, it's sometimes, when we see successful people, successful companies, we just see when they are there, right? But for sure, it was not easy to get there. And many times we make mistakes, we learn from them.
Yeah.
Can you share any experience that you made a mistake, that you went through a transformation or a situation of change that you had to restart, you had to adjust because things went wrong? Anything you would share about that?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, everybody makes mistakes. If you're not making mistakes in business, then again, you're not in business, right? I think we learn to involve the field. Again, we have a council. If you
Hmm.
just go by the people that are paid to say yes in your room, you're going to get, bad results. You've got to put the word out, I think, to people that are trusted advisors, but you don't pay them. So I have a 1099 army and we have the best of them and we want their input. So we learned to get their input before we initiated wholesale change because we wanted to see how it would impact their lives, before we told them what we were going to do. I think you can always test a little bit more. We learned maybe to test some things a little bit more before we rolled them out. But again, I think the biggest lesson I've learned in the last year, and I have to push myself to do so, is to think about what I'm not thinking about. It's easy to think about, okay, we do this, sales will go up, commissions will go up, production will go up, efficiency will go up. But I always try and push myself past that, now. All right, well, what aren't you thinking about? Let's say efficiency does go up. What does that mean? Going to need less people, does that mean your business is going to increase? If your business does increase, are you prepared to handle that increase? If it increases in a certain region of the United States or the world, are you prepared for that? If it increases in a certain culture that requires a different language, are you prepared for that? So I think everybody's always gung ho about changes that they think will enhance their business, but I don't think they think about two ways. What happens if it doesn't go the way you want? How will you shift? How will you be prepared for that? And what happens if your dreams come true and everything happens the way you want it to happen? What are you missing? Right? And what could change? We can talk about that in a minute, but we've had some monster changes in the last year and a half or 2 years that we can talk about.
Thank you. That's powerful. One of the things that I hear you saying is also around, engaging people in the feedback. As you engage with your team and be ready to hear and see, because they will help you to see what you are not seeing. And that's why you want a great team with you, right? And how powerful that can be as you switch gears and you adjust for a successful journey, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
What
And
would
I
you
think trust goes a long way. I mean, you can't just come at people when you need them or when you need their advice or when you need their thoughts. I
Mhm.
think you have to engage or build that culture right from the beginning. That we trust your opinion. We want to hear what you have to say. Now, there's ways to express it, and there's places to express it, and places and ways not to express it. But if you can be upbeat and forward thinking, we want to know from Jump Street what you think.
Yes, absolutely. What would you advise to leaders in companies? What would you say, the piece of advice that you say, that's the greatest way to manage change nowadays? What are the few things that you advise leaders?
Well, again, I think all great leaders are going to engage as much opinions or leadership as they can. But at the end of the day, I think what makes great leaders great, if you look at the Bezos and the Zuckerbergs and the Cubans or whoever you want to pick, could be political, could be whatever. At the end of the day, they're going to stick by their guns. If they know if I know that I'm heading the right direction, I'm going to ask people to follow me, and if they're not up for that journey, they might want to think about a different pathway because we're going to keep changing and we're going to keep growing and, we're going to keep doing different things. So I think you take in all the opinions that you can and all the thoughts that you can. But from there, you've got to lead, you got to take charge. If they don't believe in what we're doing, I want to understand why. Look, anybody can complain, right? I always tell people, never send me a complaint. Send me your challenge, right? I don't like the word complaint. I hate the word problems. I don't believe in them. Remember, when you run a cancer foundation on a scale 1 to 10, 10 is cancer.
Yes.
So I put out a kind of a culture out there, at least working with me on a scale 1 to 10. Okay, I hear your issue. 10 being cancer, where does this one fall, right? And
Mhm.
give me a couple suggestions of what you would do to make it better. So I never want the standalone challenge by itself. If you're gonna submit me a challenge, send me to suggestions to fix it, right? You can't just whine. I'm just not up for that, right? Um, and then again, I think it's all about listening and people feeling heard but ultimately you got to stick by your guns and do what you need to do. And there are going to be people who don't believe in it, and there are people that are going to split, and they're going to think they have a better idea, and they're going to go somewhere else. I've experienced that. The grass always might look greener on the other side. They find out that it's not. So, you got to stick to your guns and lead. And if people believe in you, they'll.
Yes, it's powerful. I like to say that change management requires great leadership skills, a strategic mindset, because you need to have a strategy behind before to be able to explain why we are going through all this change, but always leading people with transparency. And I mean, use all the leadership skills you have to really keep people engaged and motivated through the change.
Yep.
So I would say, in my opinion, these are the key elements for a good and successful change management. Would you add anything to that?
I live in a company where we've got 100 WhatsApp channels and Slack channels. I've got Slack channels with the field and WhatsApp channel, and there's 100 different channels of different departments, and so we're all weighing in all the time and just asking what each other thinks and telling us what we like and what we don't like. So I think you've got to segment conversations to the people who have the best understanding. If you leave it open to the world, you're going to get all this feedback. So I think you need to get feedback from people who understand, exactly where you're going to.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So, as you think about the next 5 years, what is your vision for you, for the company, and how are you planning to get there? Prepare your team for a successful 5 years.
I think every company has to think about giving birth. When you reach a certain stage in your company, you're going to reach a certain stage of stagnation, if you will. Whether it's people who've been doing the same thing for a long time, but life changes and people change. And if you have a sales force out there, their lives are going to change. And I think you just have to reinvent yourself. You have to give birth. You have to find new talent. Different minds, different ways of thinking, different cultures, different ages, different sizes, shapes, because again, the world looks at things through different lenses. And if you're in this world we live in today, if you're not speaking to all those different cultures and ways of thinking, I think you're going to miss the birth. So, I think the next 5 years for my company, we're going to change again the face of residential solar and renewable energy in the world. We're doing things that no one's ever done before. And we've been the fastest growing solar company now on Inc. magazine for 4 years straight. And it's because we constantly innovate and we constantly change. And, we demand, greatness in execution. But there's just things you can't plan for. And that's really the biggest lesson, I think, for the people out there today. My industry has faced things that you could never dream of, whether it's government intervention, changes in political climate. Look what happened to companies in COVID. I mean, what's the plan that companies have in place for the next time the country shuts down? Because it will. We've learned that, right? If it happened once, it's going to happen again. What's the next disease or airborne thing or results from the California fires? What's going to keep people indoors? What's going to drive the Zoom or Google Meet or the next thing that's going to happen? I'd hope for honesty amongst our partners, but you just can't predict, right now. We have a major challenge with one of our finance partners. I would encourage everybody to think out there. What happens if your biggest finance company goes out of business? What happens if you've got, millions of dollars owed to you by a partner? What are you going to do? What's your plan? What's your financing plan? So I think it's like owning a boat. I had a boat for many years. Whatever you think can go wrong is going to go wrong. You're almost better breaking it yourself. Elon Musk, my CEO pulled out a list the other day of the top 10 companies that were almost broke. Elon Musk was weeks away, if not days away, from going bankrupt and selling off Tesla. So he had to do some pretty cool things, sleep on the factory floor, re-engineer, figure things out, ask people to buy, cars for cash so they could move inventory and raise some money and all those things. So if you look at the history of our company, of our country, and the recent great companies that are changing the world, good, bad, AI, we don't know where that's going, right? I think you just have to try and always think about what could possibly happen. I mean, if you were to ask me 6 months ago, what's the worst two things that could happen to your company after COVID, after government changes in renewable energy, with a new administration, excuse me, that we're not sure exactly where they stand on clean energy. Well, throw in an apocalyptic fire event, in one of the largest markets in the world, California. Sprinkle on top of that one of the largest finance companies having challenges paying their clients like me. And where do you end up? You just can't plan for those things. And we don't even know. We don't know what the layers in California are. We don't know when it's time to rebuild, what it's going to cost, what's going to happen to the insurance industry as a result of those fires. We heard about policies being canceled before the fires. What's going to happen now? And how those costs are going to be passed on to the consumer and to clients and customers and companies. And, how do you see that coming? How did you see COVID coming? How did you see the fires coming? How did you see these things? What's next? Because if we're learning anything in today's world, there is a next. Now they're talking about mudslides in California. It's almost a perfect example. So you had the rain, you had lack of rain, and you had the fires, and you had the devastation, you had the death, and now you got the rain that you were praying for. Now it's there. Well, what's that bring? Now it's got mudslides. What are you going to do about that? And then once the mudslides happen, what are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about washing the ocean and we're an environmental company, so we tend to think, I tend to think on those lines. But you just got to keep thinking about what's next because nothing stays the same.
Absolutely.
I'll share with you real quick a couple of the principles of our company. Just, here's our core values. We list them down. Find a way. So no matter what, right? Find a way to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Innovate constantly. We are always innovating. Number three, big one, get shit done. No matter what, get shit done. Communicate authentically, serve our community. I think that's something that's important. It's not that if I want to do this, run a company or run this company or change the company. It's the fact that you get to do it. That we're blessed to be able to get to do these things, that we're blessed to be able to serve our employees and our 1099 members and our clients. And I think some type of people, I think sometimes they look at it the wrong way. Like, we do this, but we are honored. We're blessed to be able to do this. Our company tries to stay devoted to growth, making things work extraordinarily well, see the big picture, work together through it all, and think and act like an owner. We ask every member of our community to think and act like an owner. It's easy to just make blank statements, but it's different when you have to look at it when it's your company, when it's impacting the lives of other people and their mortgage payments and their children's education and all those things. So, everybody's got an opinion, but think about it from another standpoint of view. Companies right now are making change. They're downsizing. I know we are. We're right sizing. You have to cut back in some areas, and that could feel really bad. It does feel really bad, right? It feels bad to us, but I try and engage our community in understanding that we are doing this to serve their interests. If when industries change and volume shifts and production changes, you've got to make sure that the people that are following you understand why you're doing it. If they just start hearing that you're laying people off or you're cutting commissions or you're doing this or you're doing that, sometimes they can misunderstand and think it's just pure greed or that you're self-serving or that you're doing to enhance just your bottom line or Wall Street or whatever it might be. I want them to know why we're doing it for them. And that if they were an owner, I want to engage them in the conversation that they'd be doing exactly what we're doing. So I want to, again, I want them to I want to give them a format where they can share these ideas and give them some skin in the game. What would you do? We have to protect the integrity of what we do. We have to protect the culture of what we have to do. We have to protect our bottom line. And by protecting our bottom line, we're protecting your future.
Yes, absolutely. And engaging the community. I love the fact that you included the community and also communicating with the community because you play such an important role to them.
Yeah.
And yeah,
We just engage, not to interrupt you. I'd like to think we're friends, you know?
Mhm.
And I think sometimes those two say, I think maybe there was an old theory in business, friendship and business don't go together. I don't believe that anymore. I believe in the world we live in today, where people are trying to find something to hold on to. They're trying to find someone they can trust. Life's tough enough. I got two young kids. Trying to explain the world we live in today and the business climate that we live in today with people is difficult. And I believe people will quit a company in a heartbeat, but they'll quit a friend uh, in much less, volume. So it can come back and haunt you a little bit because when you become friends, you take on people's personal lives and their struggles and all that. And if you're built for that, I've tried to pride myself on that. Our company has. But I think we're in a new world, and that old black and white, get a job, tell people what to do, see them on their coffee breaks and lunchtime, and all that. That just doesn't work anymore. We're dealing with a home workforce that's wants to get a workout in, and they want to do yoga and they want to do breath work. Again, my company's California. They want to take an ice bath, they want to do meditation, they want to do breathing. And when we add that in, like that's part of our corporate meetings. I remember one of our vice presidents saying about a year or so ago, why is it that I have to sign a waiver for my life every time I come to a corporate meeting? Because he knows he's going to have to climb a mountain or take an ice bath or do a ridiculous hike or the good news, build homes for people who need it in Mexico or whatever what is. But, it's just that non-traditional, thinking. And again, it's easy when you're in a Southern California company because they tend to think a little bit different. But we have to get our executives to think a little bit different. We're going to dance. We're going to breathe. We had a big corporate meeting the other day that started off that had to deal with some not too, it could be viewed as not too pleasant issues and change. And our
Mhm.
CEO first led everybody in breathing exercises. And I got to tell you, I called him afterwards. I said, you know something? I felt amazing after that 6 minutes of breath work.
Yeah.
It changed my whole day.
Yes.
So all that meditation and that's all part of our culture. And I think any company that's leading people through change should think about, are they open to change? Are they willing to? And I'm 66. So this was, 67 very soon. So this was different for me. I had to open my mind up that it's not just cut and dry. And we live in a different world today.
Mhm.
And you got to change with the world. You got to change with the climate. You got to do everything you can.
Yes, building this culture of changing and adapting in such a fast pace is very can be very challenging for many companies. I mean, in fact, some of my clients and they have very rigid and structured processes, and where for like 10 or 15 years, and then don't work very well anymore, and to change them, but then to be ready to change it again soon, to keep adapting and keep it competitive. For example, if you think about processes to retain talents, to hire new people and all of that. So, yes, it's amazing to build this flexibility with the changing mindset in your company. So you're not dated. You just keep moving, and
Yeah.
fast.
There was an old saying, if it's not broken, don't fix it. It's almost in the world we live in today. If it's not broken, break it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
break it. Because something's going to break it. Again, weather events. Or, the world that we live in today is headed for much more drama. Whatever. What would happen if you lost my company's lost three of the major markets in the United States for us because of government intervention, because of again, apocalyptic weather events. I toured Hawaii after Lahaina had burnt down. Now, of course, we've got California. I mean, they just have to plan that these things are coming. What would you do if you lost your biggest market? What would you do if you lost your 10 top salespeople? What would you do if your manufacturing plant broke down? What would you do if your financing company went broke? What would you do? What would you do? What you would do instead of waiting for it to happen, plan on it happening because it's going to happen.
Mhm.
This ain't the Dick Van Dyke show. I'm dating myself. This ain't this ain't the Mary Tyler Moore show. This is not Happy Days. This is a crazy world. And look what COVID did. Look what it did to retail. Look how it advanced the platform economies like I'm in. Look how it changed how people live their lives. You still see people walking around driving with masks on. Blows my mind away. One of my neighbors was outside gardening with a mask on. I'm blowing my mind. I mean, you just have to. It's never been like this before. Change has never come so quickly and so steadily and so unexpected. It's not unexpected anymore. It's planned. It's going to happen. So I would say out to anybody out there who's dealing with a company that whatever they're making, whatever they're building, whatever they're selling, you better be prepared that it's not going to happen that way in a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 5 years from now. And you better be prepared and have the guts and the team and the culture and the buy-in and the strategies and the training and the support and the communication channels that all go along with that. And if you do all those things, maybe, just maybe, you can succeed before somebody else steals your lunch or a bigger competitor comes in. What do you do when somebody swoops in and makes a better widget than you're making, or whatever, claims against your company, false claims against your company? Well,
Mm.
one of your employees steps out of line, does something stupid, makes your company look bad, harms your reputation. All these things are going to happen if you get big enough. If you get big enough, it's coming your way, and you just better be ready. I used to watch shows like that. I was engaged. I fell in love with the show Suits. Maybe people saw Suits, maybe they
Oh,
didn't.
I watched that too. I
So
love it.
I never knew what Suits was till about a year and a half ago. And then I watched it. I binge watched it for months because,
Hmm.
as you know, if you watched it, every single episode, the walls were caving.
Exactly.
Something was happening. They definitely broke some rules. They broke some boundaries. They did some things maybe they shouldn't have done, but they always had to come up with a solution. I didn't always necessarily back what they were doing or how they were doing or why were they doing, but I fell in love with the characters and the people because it was unorthodox and it was different, and they did it as a family, and they solved things every day because you just couldn't expect what was going to come next.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, it's an amazing show. Wow, thank you. It's a lot of learnings that I could take from you today, and I bet the audience will love it and will benefit from all your advice and your experience. So just to wrap up, I obviously we're going to leave some of your contacts right in the show notes, and that people can contact you. I would like to hear if you have any other final comments before we end for today.
No, I mean, look, my company's about to embark on the biggest change we've ever done. We're calling it Power 4.0 because we just kept looking at the landscape and looking at the world we live in today and looking at things that were happening and we had to make some change. And I would encourage every company too to stand for something. I think it's so important today. They've got to have a give back portion of their culture. The world needs us. Our kids. I'm a dad, and that's what gets me up in the morning. It sends me to work every day. Our children need us, and they need us more now than they ever have. And they need things to believe in. And I think they want their parent. I'm proud that my kids know that I stand for something. Anybody can make, build, sell anything. But at the end of the day, what do you stand for? You know, what are you causing? What do you believe in? What would you die for? What would you be willing to go to bat for? And that's really personally, what drives me. And I would encourage every company to look deep inside themselves and what are we doing here? What do we stand for? Are we just making something? Is it just about the bottom line? Is it just about their 401ks or their IPO or whatever it may be? It's about all that because all that can go away and money can go away. And, again, we're a believer right now. My company has a health challenge for hundreds of people, which I happen to be winning, which is a good thing. At 67, we got a lot of young people.
Hmm.
Do they have those kind of programs for their employees? Is there anything inspiring them to live a better life and feel better about what they're doing? Because I just think people want more today than they've ever wanted before. And we're faced with the challenge of the news, and most of it's bad. We're faced with the distractions of these things, and we're faced with all these things that are coming to people every day, news and new ideas and good ideas and bad ideas and worries and fear. And I think it's hard to get and retain the attention of the people that you work with today, and again, hence the friendship part, more about their lives, what they need, what they're going through. And I think that's important. People are struggling out there today. I don't know if it's ever been worse, since the Great Depression, which, I didn't live through. There are just so many challenges facing our world today. And I think every CEO, every owner, every executive, every leader should look at that. And how are the decisions making that they're making impacting the lives of the people that work with them and for them? And how will it impact their children's lives? And how will they react to that socially from a social and a moral compass? And I think if we could all do that, then we'd build a better business world and we build a better world. And again, our grandchildren need us now more than they ever have. We've got to change the way we're acting and living and building and selling and creating new space for this younger world too. I've learned some lessons there too. A lot of this next generation doesn't want to do the things that their parents did. They don't want to necessarily go to a trade school. They don't want to learn how to fix an air conditioner. Try getting help these days for a heater or, certain kinds of, items in your household because they want to work on their laptops and they want to be on Zoom and they want to be on Google and they want to be able to go on Spotify when they're off. And how do you build a culture that is conducive to motivating people that want to live in a new world and maybe even a better world?
Mhm. Yes. Wow. Thank you. That was amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Bobby, today. I'm
Thanks for
very
having me.
happy to have you here. And yes, see you the next time. Thank you so
Always willing to
much.
help out if anybody wants to contact me. I've done a fair amount of that. And it helps to get great minds in the room. You start thinking together, get a think tank together, people from different industries coming together, because you get stuck in a box and you got to get out of that box because everybody you live with, everybody talking to, everybody working with, if they're all thinking the same way and doing the same thing you're doing, you're never going to hear what the rest of the world's thinking. So bringing in other points of view and reading and listening and watching and staying motivated and staying healthy and staying in shape and having a clear mind and doing all the things the world allows us to do today. That's the competitive edge right now. Thinking clearer, thinking better, thinking more about the world. I think that's the key to staying young and thinking young and attracting the kind of people you want to attract.
Thank you. I also appreciate all your passion and energy that you brought to the podcast today. I noticed just seeing you speaking in other videos and things and how much passion and how great a speaker you are. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, take care.